Bote, Abari, Assalamu alaikum, bonjour, welcome to Henrythejedi.com.
We just need to adjust our control points a bit more. For instance, we need to select these control points here at the top there and simply, bring them a bit more inwards, of course, as you can see. And now is a very wise time to differentiate between which objects will take which particular material, because remember, towards the end, as you can see in this render that I did, you can see how nice the robot looks in the green color. And of course, this is an example showing you how it looks even better in the purplish color. So that's the next step that we're going to do here, working on the legs to define which edges or which polygons should take a material and which one should take the other. Now that's the secret or the idea behind how to assign many materials to a single object. Now before we move on, I bet you'll notice that we've kept each of these options here still on. Why? Because so that we can be able to go back to any of them and adjust them if we made a mistake. So I always like that ability to go back in time and change things, before moving on forward. So that's the whole principle behind the fact that I've decided to keep each of these modifiers still on. Okay? You notice if you try to go back to any of them, 3D Max will tell you a modifier exists in the stack that depends on topology. Changing parameters may have undesirable effects. Are you sure you want to continue? You must always say yes and do not show this message again, because 3D Max is simply trying to warn you that usually if you go back, most people usually make mistakes by going back. But don't worry, I'll teach you how not to make mistakes and so forth. So what do I mean by what I said? What I meant was that, as you can see, if you go back to the Extrude Modifier, we can change the extrusion amount, as you can see, as if we're still working back in time. And of course we can simply enter back 80 to go back to what we're working on. And if you go back to this particular modifier, you'll notice it still has all the handles that we've managed to pull out. Okay, all the way, of course, to the latest one that we've created. Now let's move on. We're going to add our next edit poly modifier. Select the polygon, and then we're going to select these polygons here, of course, that make up the very sides of the legs. Sorry, just the sides. Now those are the guys that will be able to take a particular material ID on. In other words, these sides here. Okay, so to them we are going to give them a material ID. Where is it? Okay, just scroll down until you're going to see under polygon properties. You're going to see the material ID. We're going to set the ID to 2, as you can see. Okay, so very important, change the material ID of these sides polygon to 2, and then of course the rest of the object needs to have a particular material. So we go to edit, select invert, so that it selects whatever we did not select, and now they need to have a material ID of 1, as you can see. Now when we open up the material editor, select any empty slot here. Let's rename this to leg, and then give it to our object. We're going to change it from standard to a multi-sub-object material. Discard all material, and then simply change the number 2. Sorry, where is it? Yeah, simply change the okay, let's see. Simply change the material 2's color to something else. Maybe, can you see that? By simply changing the material ID from this window here, you can see, of course, what is going on in the viewport. Okay, so this is the whole idea of having material IDs for different parts of an object. If I rotate, you can see, of course, how each of these objects keeps the proper materials. So now, once that we've accomplished the main objective of splitting the object into its material IDs, we are now going to go to the modify panel of our line again. And now this time, as you can see, our leg is too flat, so we need to give it some flesh. So let's do that. We are going to add what is called a shell modifier. this shell. And of course you can see by adding shell it gives us this growth or this thickness on our object, but we want to first reduce the every amount here to 0, as you can see, so that we can only increase the inner amount, as you can see, to make it only thicker on the inner side, as you can see. And then of course our shape is too rough, so we're going to add a mesh smooth modifier. You can see of course what mesh smoothing already does. Let's just change the iterations to 2 or actually 3. Yeah, you can see how nice and smooth our leg is looking at this point. Let's go back to the shell and maybe we just want to increase the depth a bit more. Yeah, like that should do. Right click and then turn off the edge faces, and my goodness, will you just admire this beautiful shape? I mean, this is just outstanding. It's so beautiful, it reminds me of an aeroplane, you know. Oh my goodness, look at this. This is too pretty, really. And maybe you just want to reduce the shell amount just a bit and maybe give it 2 segments, but it's fine. Giving it 1 segment does the job. Wow, I like especially up here on close inspection. You get to see exactly the beauty of the structure that we've just created. Oh my goodness. And you know what, at this point I think we can actually rename it to a leg. Okay. I'm really left speechless right now. This is quite a work of art indeed. And now, as you can see, we are very pleased with our structure, so we are going to go ahead and collapse this into one object. Actually, before we do that, just make sure that your structure looks alright, because I think before we do that, we're going to add another FFD 2x2x2 modifier. Click on the control points, and we simply want to drag that part of the leg further upwards, as you can see, you know, to give us of course a taller leg, so that of course more things can be fitted in the middle. Yeah, this is quite appropriate. And then we're going to select the control points just on this upper side of the leg, and those we just want to push them inwards like that. Not too much, remember you must never overdo anything. Okay, so yeah, I think we are pleased with this, and then we're going to right click and then collapse all. Can you see what it does by collapsing everything? It gives us this very busy scene. Now we can right click and turn off the edge faces for us of course to see what a beautiful structure we have in. Up next, our job is to make sure that the pivot point of our leg is really sitting in the middle of the leg, more or less. And so because we are doing that because you want to position this leg in the middle of the scene. So go to the hierarchy panel and then click on affect pivot only, and then we're going to click on center to object. By doing that, of course, you can see how now the pivot point is sitting now in the middle of the leg. You can now turn off that option, and then we're going to select the moving tool. We want to position the leg at 0 units on the x-axis, so we come down here and then, you know, right click to turn this into 0, and also on the y-axis right click to turn it of course also into 0 units, so that now at this point you can see of course the leg is sitting right in the middle of the scene. And then let's move on. We are going to add, okay, up next we're going to create the additional parts of the legs, and right now I'm talking about this section here. Okay, it's something that doesn't exist. Everything you see, I did it out of my own mind. Okay, there was no reference image for this, and this is really the way I like to do things, because imagination is so wide that you can always come up with different results every time. So just the way we do it here at Henrythejedi.com, and on top of that, I even decided to coat it with carbon fiber, you know, just to make it look modern. So let's go ahead and work on that. We're going to go to the create panel and then go to shapes, and now we're going to use the shape that not most of you are familiar with. It's called N-Jaune. So click on it. It's just below the arc and just above the text. I don't know how you pronounce it. I just like to pronounce it John. Yeah. And then simply draw it in the front viewport, as you can see. And then we are going to go to the modify panel. We need to reduce the number of its sides to 3, like that. And then we're going to right click and then make it an editable spline. Okay, let's go to the vertices mode now. Of course, we are going to adjust it now. Select the spline here. It needs to be a bit curvy, so right click on it, and of course we're going to make it a bezier. There we go. So that we can of course be able to manipulate it easily. And then as for the remaining ones here, you can see they have handles. We don't want that. We simply want them to be cornerish. So right click and then make it a corner angle. And then this one also, right click and make it a corner spline. Okay, so that you can see now, of course, it should be smoother. Yeah, it's just, as you can see, there's no more funny handles going on around it. We're going to select this one here, select the rotation tool and turn on the angle snap toggle, and then we're going to rotate it, of course, to minus 60 degrees, as you can see, to give it that nice shape, and simply drag it outwards like that. And now you want to turn off the angle snap toggle, and we need to make it a bit smoother, so we're simply going to increase the number of steps, as you can see, maybe to 12, like that. Okay, and then we're going to add a, of course, extrude modifier. Right click on the perspective viewport label and turn on the edge faces so that we can see what is going on. Yeah, you can see, of course, what we have now by extruding it. Gives us this nice structure. Now it's our duty to make sure this object sits nicely next to the leg. So as you can see, we are first going to move it into place and scale it down at this point already. You can see the proportions of the object as compared to the leg itself. And of course we still have access to our editable poly modifier, editable spline modifier, so that we can be able to drag these splines into place. Right click and select wireframe, so that we can see, of course, where is what's happening. Remember, this object should not show through the leg. It should be, as you can see, positioned, of course, inside the leg. And we might want to make it a bit taller. Now let's see how are things looking like from this point of view. You can see parts of it are showing there. We do not want that, so back to the editable spline modifier, wireframe, and as you can see, I'm simply doing my job to drag things into place. It's still there, this guy. Of course, don't drag it too much, just be careful. Yeah, now you'll notice it's nicely embedded within the leg. Yeah, like that, as you can see. And we want to position it to be in the middle of the leg, so we're going to click on this option here, this one here. It's the align tool, or you can always go to tools, align, and then we're going to pick the leg, of course. And of course we want to align it on the X, not on the X position, but rather on the Y position. Yeah, just on the Y position. That should do, so that it's now sitting in the center of the leg. And let's see, I think we want to extrude it a bit further, because it constitutes quite a big part in our robot. Yeah, like that. I'm going to click again on the align tool and pick our leg again on the Y position. Make sure it's at the centers of the object and hit OK again. Yeah, that way, of course, you can see now how nicely it's sitting in there. We can open up the material editor now. We're going to give this a proper material, of course. Select this empty slot here, and of course we're going to call it carbon fiber. make sure it's two-sided, and of course assign it to this object. We're now going to give it this additional ring. Of course, as you can imagine, it is simply a tube. Come to the front viewport here and let's draw our tube there, right on the object. Okay. And just drag it inwards. And we are going to give the tube curved segments of 1 so that it just adds that additional cut through it. And also we are going to add a simple mesh smooth modifier for it. Okay, like that. Turn off the edge faces so you can see what's going on. And I think we just want to give it maybe, let's see, more segments, maybe 28. Okay. Let's add an edit poly modifier just below this mesh smoothing. Turn on the edge face and we're going to select that edge and loop them and simply drag this forward, as you can see. Okay. Remember, the mesh smoothing for this object is the iteration is only 1. Okay, just in case you've added too many iterations to yours. Okay, yeah, there it is, just for some artistic look and feel. Of course, we can go ahead now and right click and collapse that structure. And then we're going to be clever because we don't need some additional unnecessary vertices. So the best way, of course, is to get rid of them. So select the vertices mode, and then we're going to select each of these vertices there on the inside and simply delete them, so that it frees our computer from unnecessary polygons. And those, of course, can simply be dragged backwards. Yeah. The whole idea is that these things are hidden within another structure. So what's the point of rendering or leaving them with so many vertices that they can use, you know, while nobody will hardly get to see them anyways. So yeah, you see now, of course, what we have. Cool, eh? Up next, of course, is that structure there, that hydraulic system there. Oh my goodness, I have never done engineering, but imagination led me to thinking that this was actually a hydraulic system, which I think it is anyways. But before moving on, this structure here, let's see, we are first going to add, let's see, open up the material editor, and let's see, we'll come back to it. Okay, so here we go. We're going to create a cylinder. Just throw it out there. Okay, now to this cylinder, let's give it a height segment of 10 for now, because we are going to adjust quite a lot of its vertices. And of course, make sure that at least it has at least 20 sides. So our first duty, of course, let's see, I think let's just give it maybe, let's see, 24 sides to work with. Okay, yeah, we're going to right click on it and then make it, of course, an editable polygon. And now here we go. We're going to begin by adjusting certain vertices as follows. Select each of these except, of course, the ones at the bottom, and begin by moving them upwards, as you can see. The whole idea now is just trying to create these interceptions there, you know, where things are thinner and others are bigger. So we're going to select these vertices here, as you can see. Please have a look carefully. Now those we are going to simply scale down and then scale upwards, as you can see. I think let's just be careful for now and just scale them like that. Okay, and then next, of course, we are working upwards. We simply select those ones. Okay, these ones need to be moved a bit down. Okay, where's the next cut? Okay, these ones need to be a bit bigger, but still bigger, smaller than these ones at the bottom there. So we select these ones here and simply scale them down and like that. Okay, because the idea is that these ones at the bottom still need to remain the biggest. As you can see, I'm scaling them down. I'm scaling them up, sorry. Yeah, and now these vertices at the bottom there, we are going to move them to 0 units on the x-axis, as you can see. Moving on up, select those ones over there, and they of course need to be much smaller as well. Even smaller. Okay, and these ones at the top here, they are not needed. These ones here, select that edge and loop them, and then we're going to hit remove, and then we go to the vertices mode and select the vertices that were left behind, and also they must be removed, of course. And these ones here, these vertices here, need to be scaled a bit down and out like that. So basically you can see, of course, exactly which structure we're dealing with at this point. Yeah, you can see of course what it looks like. Nice, eh? So it's a simple hydraulic system at this point. Let's open up the material editor. Since this object needs to be split according to the materials, we are going to select, let's see, an empty slot, call it hydraulic system. Assign it to our object, change it from a standard material to a multi-sub object. Okay, and then the material number 2, we're going to give it a darkened texture. Okay. Select the polygon mode, and of course you know what we're about to do. We're going to split each of these materials according to the material IDs. So select the polygons. Okay, we have to be careful actually. Okay, it seems we have to select them manually, or let's see, let's try to be a bit smarter. Select these vertices. Let's see, can vertices be given material IDs? No, they cannot. Only polygons. Unfortunately. So we're going to select the polygon mode and begin to pick up every polygon that we need to give a particular material ID. And by the way, at this point we are going to turn on ignore back facing so that we don't accidentally select any other polygon that could be facing the other side. Okay, so we are going to give each of these bulgy sections here a carbon fiber texture. So that's where we are selecting them, as you can see. Now of course at this point we want to begin to rotate around the scene. Oh yeah, as you can see, we're being very careful so that we really do select each of these polygons here that will actually make up the carbon fiber texture section. As you can see, I've gone to edge faces, edge faces, so that I can see easily what is going on. Okay, so you can see what we have at this point. And then once you've done that, we're going to click on the grow button. You can see, of course, what does the grow button do? It selects even more polygons that need to be given a particular ID. Now to those polygons we're going to give a material ID of 2. Come here to the polygon properties, give a material ID of 2. Then we go to edit, select invert, so that it can select the rest, and those need to be given a material ID of 1, like that. Okay. You'll notice now, of course, if we bring up the material editor and if we darken the sections, you can see, of course, beautifully which ones will make it and which ones will not.